For all things football,
wow, you will not see a better goal.
BBC Sounds has got you covered.
These fans have gone absolutely wild.
More live Premier League football than anywhere else on 5 Live.
And there is the whistle, and a brand new season begins.
And the Football Daily podcast.
Everything football, every day.
For all the Premier League action and reaction, listen on BBC Sounds. BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Good morning, I'm Alistair Lamont. This is the Scottish Football Podcast. All the news, views and analysis you need. It's Wednesday the 28th of August. It's the day many Scotland fans have been waiting for. They're feeling supersonic because after a long absence, this man is back in the national team squad.
Armstrong onto Ryan Gauld, who could finish. He has. Kipchie, it's a great pass into Ryan Gauld, and it's an even better finish.
Just how significant is Ryan Gould's inclusion? We discuss, as well as assessing the rest of the call-ups to Steve Clarke's squad. Speaking of Clarke, we'll also be hearing from the head coach.
Obviously, I've always said I'd love to go to a World Cup with my country. I've got a group of players that are determined to go to a World Cup with the country, and some of them will be their last chance. Will certainly be my last chance. So there's your motivation there.
And away from the Scotland team,
Hagi's inside the area, he shoots and scores brilliantly. Superb goal for Rangers, Ianis Hagi.
He's taken to social media and doesn't want to slide away. So what's happening with Hagi at Rangers?
The Scottish Football Podcast from BBC Sport Scotland.
Well, good morning to you all, and apologies already for those Oasis references that the producers slipped into today's script. But just briefly, I'm joined by Kevin Thompson, former Scotland midfielder, of course, and John Walker, coach, analyst and host of the Scots Abroad podcast. Are you both excited about the Oasis reunion or ambivalent?
I'll wait until the ticket prices are out.
My kids want to go out, so I don't know if that's saying that I'm...
That's exactly the same. As mine are much more excited than I am. Having seen them several times back in the day, I'm not that fussed. But anyway, that's just because I'm old. Anyway, we'll get into some football chat just shortly with Kevin and John. But before that, let's quickly run through the latest Scottish football headlines. After naming his squad to face Poland and Portugal in the Nations League, Scotland head coach Steve Clarke says he's earned the right to see out the remaining 2 years of his contract. The inclusion of Vancouver Whitecaps captain Ryan Gauld for the first time in 10 years was the call-up that captured most attention. Romania midfielder Ianis Hagi has posted on social media he's willing to help, work and fight for Rangers, despite being not part of manager Philippe Clement's plans. The 25-year-old's been training with the B team after spending last season on loan at Alaves in Spain. As Celtic step up their transfer activity, it's been reported the Barcelona fullback Alex Valle will undergo a medical ahead of signing a one-year loan deal with the Parkhead club. And the former Celtic midfielder Matt O'Reilly limped off just a few minutes into his Brighton debut during his new side's 4-0 win over Crawley. He was on the receiving end of a crunching tackle that Seagulls manager Fabian Hutzler described as a ridiculous foul that should not be part of football.
The Scottish Football Podcast.
Okie, only one place to start, and that is with the men's national team. John, I know you've been a big fan of Ryan Gauld for a while now, reading your stuff on social media, so I'm assuming you are well pleased to see him finally get this recall to the national side.
Yeah, I think anyone who doesn't watch the MLS understand the standard of the league is overall could be pretty poor, but if anyone watched that Scotland team or even the build-up to the Euros, it is desperately lacking that bit of spark, that bit of creativity, something different. It's very much a team backed up with central midfielders in that middle area. There's not really anyone that is that kind of old-fashioned 10 or a creative inverted winger. That's what Ryan Gauld is. I think we've seen that in Portugal in the top flight. Before he went out to MLS, he was an absolute shining light, was creating chances against the top teams, was scoring goals for a very poor Firenze side. I think in MLS, he's kind of, if the MLS standard is low, you look for people that are still way above the average and way above the top players. And he is that. He's an all-star player in the league. And in the 3 seasons he's been there, he's created 300 chances. That's extraordinary in any league. There's nobody in Scottish football that's doing those numbers. So yeah, I think his inclusion is the one that I would have added many years ago. I think it's not too late, but I feel like we've missed probably 3 or 4 years of Ryan Gauld of what he's been doing.
Yeah, I mean, he's certainly been setting the heather on fire out in the States. Kevin, how difficult though is it to assess relatively, someone who's doing really well out in a league like that compared to what it will take to make an impact in the national team?
I don't think we're in a position to be too negative on what players are playing in what country. Or I just think listen, Steve, I think has done a brilliant job. I get there's a hangover for the Euros. I listened to the news last night. I don't know what the reporter was that was throwing the questions at him, but it certainly felt like a difficult interview for him, and there is obviously a bit of animosity moving forward. But listen, I think Steve Clarke's done a brilliant job. He'll know all too well about Ryan Gauld. He'll know his qualities. He'll have watched him. He'll have had people go and watch him. So I think, without sounding too disrespectful to people that have been on the fringes of the squad or the ones that have maybe not been included, the squad almost picks itself. So you're just looking maybe for a Ryan or a player that might have a wee bit of magic, might bring something different. Obviously, Lewis Morgan was one that found himself kind of come from nowhere into the squad. Same type of player that John's just obviously mentioned there, that player that can make things happen in the final third. He can see a pass, create a goal. And Ryan's obviously done that year after year after year. So for me, I would never look really... Listen, I'm not saying that you could play in the bottom leagues, but I certainly think the standard of Ryan as an individual more than warrants an opportunity to be involved in the squad.
Do you see him, John? Because the thing is that Kevin mentions Lewis Morgan there, who did come into the Euros squad, but didn't get much of an opportunity. Ultimately, are these games against Poland and Portugal a time where Steve Clarke is going to put in kind of untested players? So
judging by the squad, there's only 4 centre-halves there, so I think we're going to see a 4-3-3, and we're going to see the end of this 5-3-2, 5-4-1 box midfield formation, because it's a formation that we brought in only to suit the fact that we had 2 world-class left-backs. We don't have 2 world-class left-backs anymore. We've got a world-class left-back and somebody who will miss 50% of the games every year, just how it seems. So we need something different. It needs to be players like Ben Doak, Lewis Morgan, Ryan Gauld that will come in to those areas behind the front line. And you've got Shea Adams, Lawrence Shankland, and Lyndon Dykes who can still perform that lone striker role, but with actual supply from wide areas, and you're not relying on Andy Robertson to get up and down the pitch consistently. And I think what we're probably going to see is John McGinn slot back one rather than his more advanced positions and be Callum McGregor's replacement in that Scotland side. So I think the inclusion of Ben Doak, Lewis Morgan, Ryan Gauld and James Forrest, you're going to see a 4-3-3 or a 4-2-3-1, something different for Steve Clarke, something that he's done a couple of times, but try and get away from the back 5. And if you're doing that, they then meet more creative players, and Lewis Morgan, Ryan Gauld, James Forrest still, the age is kind of come out of nowhere. James Forrest will still do that, Lewis Morgan will do that. I'm quite excited to see if it is a bit of the handbrake off and we try and start going for teams, because we've realised that maybe our quality before was in our structure, and now we've got all these players. We've got players like Billy Gilmore, John McGinn performing at the absolute elite level. Maybe it's time for us to actually start pushing forward. It's a real shame Lewis Ferguson's missing, because he would have been the exceptional one to add to that talent list.
Yeah, well, before we go any further, let's hear a little bit of what the Scotland head coach Steve Clarke had to say as he addressed the media and discussed, among other things, why he's called up Ryan Gauld now.
He was in my thoughts before the tournament. He's obviously chosen a different path in his career. Left Scotland as a very young man. On a roundabout journey, ended up in Vancouver, where he's been one of the best players, one of the most valuable players. He's a creative player. He's slightly different to the type of player that we've got. It'll be nice to have a look at him up close and personal. I think I touched on it before the championships in the summer, that maybe we'd freshen a little bit going into this campaign, just to have a look at 1 or 2 different players, try and give ourselves a deeper pool of talent, and that's the way it is. Obviously got some players still not with clubs. Liam Cooper and Stuart Armstrong spring to mind. We hope they'll get fixed up sometime this week. Still lots of injuries to deal with, which is an issue, but also an opportunity for other people. Everyone's disappointed that we didn't achieve what we wanted to achieve in the tournament. I think the biggest thing is you have to learn in football to move on. It's most important. The last time we had a disappointment that would be on this level would have been when we failed to get to the World Cup. We went away, we reset, we came back, and we managed to qualify for the Nations League A section. So we responded well. The last qualifying campaign for the Euro 24 was probably one of our best. That's what we have to do again.
It obviously affords the chance, Steve, to reflect, a nation reflecting on what happened in the summer, you reflecting the players. Was there ever a time where you thought perhaps it's time to move on, for you personally?
No.
What was the catalyst then for you staying on to see this through?
My contract. And obviously I've always said I'd love to go to a World Cup with my country. I've got a group of players that are determined to go to a World Cup with the country, and some of them will be their last chance. Will certainly be my last chance. So there's your motivation there.
Okay, so you guys, I think I've both mentioned Ben Doak already. Clearly missed out on the Euros and hasn't had any. In fact, his Liverpool future seems to be in some doubt. But Kevin, for you, are these the kind of guys that we should be kind of blooding into the squad at this stage?
Yeah, there's no doubt he's an exceptional talent, Al. But we've only seen him in glimpses, haven't we? Because he's never really consistently played for anyone. So there's no doubt. I remember speaking to Darren O'Day about him when he was linked with Liverpool, and he'd obviously gone to the fringes of the first team at Celtic. He'd broke in. I think, quote me if I'm wrong, he come on and scored, didn't he? In his debut, I'm sure, at Celtic Park, or he certainly made an influence in a game late on as a substitute. Just try to think of it maybe like an Aberdeen or something. I think they might even be getting beat at Celtic Park, and he come on and made an impact or whatever. And all of a sudden, this name started to be on the end of people's tongues. And Daz O'Day told me that he was as good as he had ever seen. And listen, he had a really good career himself, Daz, and he played with lots of good players. So for him to say that made me think this boy must be something special. The hard part, Al, for these young players when they go down south is they go into such a talented squad or talented clubs that they can sometimes get lost a wee bit. And I'm not saying that Ben's obviously done that, because there's no doubt that he's an exceptionally talented player, but we want to see him be playing week in, week out for a club. Where that is, where that looks like, I suppose is a challenge for him and his kind of people that look after him. But to think that he can go from not being too involved in first team football to then us putting so much pressure on him to think that he can grab the national team playing against some of these big nations is, I think it's a wee bit far-fetched, to be honest. I'm not saying that he cannot do it, but I would like to see some of these younger players playing week in, week out, whether it's going on loan, whether it's been somewhere. And naturally, games under your belt, these players playing competitive football can only help us for the long term in the national team.
There was quite a bit of chat in the lead up to the squad announcement that Connor Barron was going to feature, and he certainly, to my mind, started his Rangers career well, John. Were you surprised that he didn't make it?
I guess so, just on having watched Rangers quite continuously, that he is the one that I felt had stepped up, and I don't think there seems to be any gaps just now. I think he would have been an obvious replacement for Ryan Jack's position in the squad, but again, maybe we've changed that formation or the ideas going forward that we didn't need another centre midfielder. But I do think Connor Barron's acid tested this weekend to see where Connor Barron actually is as a Rangers player, because right now what's the highlights is we failed to qualify for the Champions League, and he was part of that midfield, unfortunately. The Old Firm will be the big test for him when he's up against Callum McGregor, Rio Hatate, Bernardo. It doesn't matter really how well you stand out against Ross County just now. It's how do you perform at Parkhead with no fans in a title race. That'll define if Connor Barron's ready to be in the next Scotland squad, I'd imagine. Obviously, Callum McGregor is now missing from the squad, Kevin, as well as the likes of Kieran Tierney, who John touched on a bit earlier. Aaron Hickey and Nathan Patterson are still out. So we've got some big players still missing. How big an issue do you think that will be in the upcoming games? Yeah, obviously the two younger ones, Al, have got long Scotland careers in front of them, no doubt, Patterson and Hickey. But no, when you talk about Kieran Tierney and Callum McGregor, they've been mainstays, top players within the squad for a long time. So there's no doubt that one door kind of shuts, another door opens for people like Lewis Ferguson and people like Connor Barron to try and obviously muscle their way into the squad and become the next Callum McGregor or the next Ryan Jack or the next Barry Ferguson, Scott Brown, whoever it may be. Do you know what I mean? But when you think the overall squad, it's a good transition for Scotland, I think, Al, because you've got boys like John McGinn, Andy Robertson. So without sounding disrespectfully, Callum and Kieran, because they're both brilliant players and they've been brilliant for Scotland, top players. But I think it's a good position for Steve to be in, that it's not like the squad relies on the two players. You've got the next kind of ones just under that are almost taking over that mantle. Because I think when you go into the transition that I think Scotland are going to go into, when you mention Pattersons and Hickeys and
Lewis Ferguson's, potentially Connor Barron's. You then got Ben Dokes, these kind of younger players coming through, albeit there's plenty of ones that are probably just as old as me and John. But I certainly think it's a good thing for Steve to have that. A lot of people spoke about that camaraderie, that togetherness, the people that the environment that Steve had created when the squads go away. So these players will be, paramount for that to continue. And I know a fan will say, well, what does that look like when we have a poor Euros or there's a hangover, there's a disappointment? I understand that, but the flip of that is, where's our entitlement, Al, that we're Scotland and we think that we can go and win the Euros? We have to know where we're at as well. We have to have some realistic expectations, and I think we have as a whole. But I'm just one of the ex-players that I think we've got a really talented squad. I think we've got a talented manager, and we would like to see, I don't know if I'd use the same terminology as John, the handbrake, but we've got some talented football players. So I'd like to see us have a go and be a wee bit more combative and a wee bit more creative and a wee bit more, not gung-ho, but certainly a wee bit more exciting, because the harsh reality is, what have we got to lose as a nation? There's no expectation for us to be winning Euros or World Cups, etc. So let's go and showcase some of the talent that we've got and go and have a go.
Yeah, I mean, Steve Clarke certainly mentioned himself that we have to be more creative, and I think there is still a bit of disappointment probably from the Euros as a bit of an opportunity missed when you see how the likes of Georgia went across there and they did play with a bit more freedom, as if they had nothing to lose, and maybe a lot of Scotland fans and pundits and so on feel that Scotland could have done similar. Do you see, John, then, that, as you've talked about, maybe a change in formation as well? Steve Clarke says he's earned the right to see out his remaining 2 years for this World Cup campaign that will follow the Nations League. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think that's fair. Even people like myself who shout their mouths off on Twitter about Steve Clarke maybe not being the person I'd like to see in the job, I do think he's earned the right to have a crack at the World Cup. It is all well and good me saying I think we should play better football, we should be more attacking, we should be freer because the talents we do have. But Steve Clarke came into an absolute issue of a Scotland side that we were going nowhere fast. We were going to be on the brink of me never seeing an international tournament again, as far as I was concerned. So he did fix a lot of those problems. He got us back winning, he got Hampden, came back sold out. I don't know I know it's not as big sales just for the upcoming campaign, but I think maybe these games could bring people back again. But yeah, Steve Clarke's definitely had the right to try and get us to 2026.
The Nations League campaign is going to be tough though, isn't it, Kevin, in terms of the teams we're facing? I suppose Poland at home to start off with is as straightforward as it's going to get, you would imagine, because Portugal away following that's going to be really difficult. But how optimistic are you going into these couple of games, but also the campaign as a whole?
Yeah, I think you've got to be optimistic. I think the team's more than capable, and I think Steve's more than capable when these big one-off games come. I know it's a campaign, I get the next game obviously follows that, but I always think when, a bit like the Euros, I suppose, which I think was a disappointment for me really, that you have the 3 games, they're big cup finals, do you know what I mean? And you've probably got nothing to lose in the 3 games. I feel as though it's that mentality I have really as a kind of as the nation that we represent. It's there's no doubt Poland will be difficult. They've still got some superstars in there, but in Portugal will be another stern test for the lads. But I think what John says there, I think when the crowd are behind the team, when there's a connection between the fan base, for the media, aligned to the players, I think it can be really powerful. I get when you have disappointments, it's the same as representing a club like Rangers or Celtic. If you get to the end of the season and there's disappointment, you could argue it's a bit the same as a national team at the moment. You get to tournaments, or you maybe are in good strides to achieving the goals of what people expect, and all of a sudden there's disappointment. It seems as though I never used to think there was such a hangover on the national team. It was almost like people expected us not to qualify and people expected us to not get there, and now all of a sudden Steve's changed that narrative, the players have changed that narrative. Now us as fans are disappointed when we don't go and win things. So I certainly think the group is a difficult one, but at the same time, I'd be backing the boys, and I think if the fans can be there behind them, which I'm sure they will be, and as John's touched on, I'm going to be intrigued to see if things are going to change moving forward, because I certainly think that'll be the scrutiny that comes under Steve. If it's the same old, I think he'll soon feel the brunt, unless it's the same old and we get a result.
Okay, just before we go, I just wanted to quickly have a chat with both of you about one of the other stories doing the rounds. Yanis Hadji on Instagram talking about the noise and speculation about his own future at Rangers, and he remains willing to help, work and fight, to quote him, for the club. John, I mean, clearly Ianis Hagi in his time at Ibrox has proved he's a quality player. Clearly his bad injury has not helped him at all. Do you see any way of him continuing to be a Rangers player?
I think Ianis Hagi's a different one to like a Todd Cantwell. This is the first time I think we've seen Hagi really post any sort of cryptic message or anything that's kind of been trying to single out what his situation is. He felt like someone who was on his way out. But the one thing about Hagi is Hagi's been training with the B team. Hagi has been playing the B team games. He's been there. He's been available. So he's not sitting out. He's not training on his own. I think that's maybe where this has come from. I suspect there's been a move or a couple of moves on the table, and there's been no way of agreeing a fee or a deal for himself. And now he's backed into a corner whereby Rangers is the only option he has just now. And now it's a case of letting the fans know. I don't know if that's a way to try and put pressure on us to sell him or put pressure on us to push him back into the squad. But if Hagi's fit, if Hagi's getting paid by us, I know there is rumours of this contract extension and wage rise behind the scenes. If he plays another game for Rangers or another 2 games for Rangers, that's obviously the issue for us. We do not have money to be extending contracts and raising wages just now.
Yeah, it's a curious one, isn't it, Kevin? And we don't know, obviously, the ins and outs of, as John's talking about, the contract and stuff like that. But on the face of it, is he a player that you would like to see being part of Rangers' title challenge this season?
Oh, listen, there's no doubt he's a talented player, Al. He's, John was, I don't know specifically because it's no my bag that, but when you think about the stats and the big moments, the bravery that he used to have, I used to speak to Stephen and Michael about him. Do you know what I mean? Like when he used to sometimes, that type of player that used to rotate the front boys. You obviously had Ryan Kent playing in that team at the time, who was a mainstay, Alfredo, etc. And Ianis was one, like with a Joe Aribo dropping back a line, a Ianis playing, but they used to always talk about his courage, being able to take the ball in tight areas and risk the ball and obviously give it away at times, which can be the disgruntlement of the fans, because I know what it's like at Ibrox. But these key players that play these key passes, the difficult passes, the ones that change games, they naturally give the ball away. So their stats might be a wee bit lower, they might look different, fans might get frustrated with them, but they're match winners and they're game changers. And I think Ianis is that. I've only bumped into him a few times personally when I've obviously worked in there. A really humble, good lad. But I find it a strange situation now, because if he has got this rumoured wage rise, etc., then I understand it. But it also is a difficult position for the fans. Want to see the best players on the pitch, and everybody. We talk about the Scotland national team being united and together. The Rangers need that as a club. They need the stadium stuff's been going on. They've been at Hampden. I was there myself on Saturday. There's a disgruntlement, but then the team performs really well, albeit Ross County were poor. But I have to say the team were very good. Scored 6 goals and it could have been another 3 or 4 more. But also done the Motherwell game, and there was a different feeling. And there was a poor second half, and there was animosity. So I think when you just specifically use Ianis Hagi as a kind of talking point, I think Rangers need all the good players that they've possibly got. And it seems naive not to have somebody like Ianis, Todd Cantwell, these type of players' futures to either be sorted and everybody be quite transparent with what's going on, and the team moves forward. Because the harsh reality, these type of players are picking up big wages out of the club. So if they're not going to play, there has to be a way of trying to shift them on, and there has to be a resolution, because I'm not so sure you want to go and start a season or a title challenge with boys like Todd Cantwell and Ianis Hagi loitering in the background and not using the funds that are available for them.
Well, we'll see how that all unravels over the next few days, with the transfer window closing on Friday night. That is all we've got time for just now. Many thanks to Kevin Thompson and John Walker, and thank you for listening. And of course, we'll be here with the Scottish Football Podcast every day, so to be alerted when new episodes are out, subscribe on BBC Sounds and have push notifications turned on your phone. Well, that's all for now. Bye.
This is the shocking moment English football has been dreading.
My name is Moses Swabu, and I used to be a professional footballer, but then I got in deep with organised crime and became a match fixer operating in the English League.
A match-fixing investigator has highlighted 2 matches he says appear to have suspicious betting patterns.
How honest are you going to be with me? This is 100%. Join me for Sports Strangers Crimes presents Confessions of a Match Fixer. Listen on BBC Sounds.